Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Jason seeks Colchis. The harbor of Colchis stirred long before sunrise. Sailors moved along the docks carrying coils of rope and jars of fresh water, while merchants paused their work to watch the great ships being prepared for departure. The Argo stood apart from every vessel around it, its polished timbers gleaming in the growing light and its carved prow facing the open sea. Beyond the familiar coastline stretched waters few Greeks had crossed, and somewhere far beyond the horizon lay Colchis, a distant kingdom known more through stories than experience. It was there, people said, that the golden fleece hung beneath sacred trees, guarded by powers that did not welcome strangers. Jason stood near the water's edge and watched the first rays of sunlight spill across the harbor. The cool sea breeze carried the scent of salt, pine resin, and wet rope. Around him gathered the heroes who had pledged themselves to the voyage. Some were renowned warriors, others hunters, wrestlers, and adventurers whose names were already celebrated throughout Greece. Their confidence filled the harbor, yet Jason's thoughts were fixed upon something larger than glory. The journey ahead was unlike any he had ever known. Colchis existed at the edge of the world he understood, beyond familiar maps, beyond the stories told by returning sailors. To reach it would require trust in roads that existed only upon the sea. The quest had begun with a challenge that seemed impossible. To reclaim what had been promised to him, Jason had been ordered to retrieve the golden fleece. Many believed the task was designed to send him to his death. Yet the more he considered the journey, the more he felt himself drawn to it. The unknown possessed a strange power. It called to those willing to leave certainty behind. Standing beside the Argo, Jason understood that no one could promise what waited beyond the horizon. Storms, strange kingdoms, monsters, and wonders might all lie ahead. The sea offered no guarantees. As the morning brightened, sacrifices were made to the gods. Smoke rose from sacred fires and drifted upward into the clear sky. Families embraced loved ones who would soon vanish into the distance. The harbor filled with voices, prayers, and farewells. Then, at last, the ropes were released. Sailors pushed away from the dock, and the Argo began to glide across the water. A great cheer followed from the shore as the ship moved toward deeper sea. Jason remained at the bow as the coastline slowly receded behind him. Hills became shadows, temples became pale outlines across the sky. Ahead stretched only open water, shimmering beneath the sun. Somewhere beyond that vast expanse waited Colchis and the destiny that had summoned him from home. He could not see the path that would lead him there, but as the wind filled the sails and carried the Argo eastward, he realized that every map begins the same way, with the courage to venture beyond its edges. Story 2. Xuanzang journeys west. The monastery bells sounded before dawn, their deep voices rolling through the cool morning air as mist drifted across the courtyards and tiled rooftops. The world still rested beneath the fading stars when Xuanzang stepped beyond the monastery gates. Behind him lay the familiar halls where he had studied sacred texts for years. Before him stretched thousands of miles of mountains, deserts, kingdoms, and unknown roads leading westward toward India, the birthplace of the Buddha's teachings. For many years, Xuanzang had devoted himself to learning. He copied scriptures by lamplight, listened to teachers, and studied every text he could obtain. Yet the more he learned, the more questions arose. Different versions of the sacred writings seemed to contradict one another. Important teachings were missing or incomplete. The answers he sought could not be found within the walls of the monastery. If he wished to understand the teachings fully, he would have to journey to their source. The road west was not a safe one. Travelers spoke of vast deserts where entire caravans disappeared beneath shifting sands. They told stories of mountain passes buried in snow, bandits lurking along lonely roads, and kingdoms separated by languages and customs unfamiliar to those from China. Many believed the journey impossible. Others warned that no amount of knowledge could justify such danger. Yet, Xuanzang could not ignore the calling that had taken root within him. Some journeys begin not with certainty, but with a question that refuses to be silenced. As the sun rose higher, he traveled beyond cultivated fields and into open countryside. Villages faded behind him. Familiar landmarks disappeared. The roads stretched onward through valleys and hills, winding toward lands he could not read about in books. Each step carried him farther from everything he knew. The world seemed larger than he had imagined, filled with countless paths branching beyond the horizon. Yet instead of fear, he felt wonder. The unknown no longer appeared as a barrier. It had become an invitation. By evening, Xuanzang climbed a ridge overlooking the land behind him. The monastery was gone from sight, hidden beyond distance and time. Ahead lay deserts that shimmered beneath the setting sun and mountain ranges whose peaks glowed gold in the fading light. Somewhere beyond them waited the answers he sought. Gathering his cloak around him, he turned toward the west and continued onward. The map of his journey remained unfinished, but he had already taken the first step toward filling its empty spaces. Story 3. Erik the Red's Voyage. The wind swept across the fjord, carrying the scent of salt water and pine from the distant shores. Gray clouds drifted above dark mountains whose peaks still held patches of snow despite the season. Along the rocky coastline, longships rested upon the water, rising and falling with the tide. Men moved among them carrying supplies, while families gathered nearby to watch preparations that would soon carry their loved ones beyond the edge of the known world. Erik the Red stood near the shore and studied the sea. Behind him lay Iceland, a land he had helped settle after leaving Norway years before. Yet even here, peace had proven difficult to him. Disputes and feuds had forced him from one home after another, until he once again found himself looking toward an uncertain future. Rumors had reached him of land far to the west, glimpsed by sailors blown off course during storms. Most dismissed such stories as exaggerations born from sea mist and imagination. Erik did not. The ocean had always rewarded those willing to seek what others overlooked. As the ships were loaded with food, tools, livestock, and timber, the settlement buzzed with nervous excitement. The voyage would be dangerous. The North Atlantic was a place of towering waves, hidden ice, and sudden storms capable of swallowing even the strongest vessel. Yet the possibility of new land stirred the hearts of many. Maps offered little guidance. Beyond the western horizon stretched a vast emptiness marked more by questions than certainty. When the day of departure arrived, the ships pushed away from the shore beneath the sky, streaked with pale sunlight. Seabirds circled overhead while the coastline slowly receded behind them. For days, the fleet sailed across open water. Sometimes the sea remained calm and reflective as polished metal. At other times, wind and waves battered the ships with relentless force. Still, they continued westward, guided by experience, instinct, and hope. At last, after many days, a distant coastline appeared through the morning mist. Mountains rose from the sea and valleys spread beneath open skies. The land seemed wild, vast, and untouched. Erik gazed upon it and imagined farms, settlements, and futures not yet built. Though challenges surely awaited, he saw possibility where others might have only seen isolation. As the ships approached the unfamiliar shore, Erik understood that every voyage begins long before land is sighted. It begins with the decision to trust a horizon that offers no guarantees. The maps of the world were still incomplete, but before him lay a place that would soon become part of them. Turning toward the coast, Erik guided his ship onward, following a path few had ever dared to imagine. Story 4. The Messenger on the Capac Neon. The first light of dawn touched the peaks of the Andes, painted snow-covered mountains in shades of gold and rose. Far below, clouds drifted through deep valleys, while rivers carved their way through the rugged landscape. Across the immense world stretched the Capac Neon, the great road of the Inca. Stone pathways crossed mountains, deserts, forests, and plains, linking distant communities into a vast network that connected the empire from horizon to horizon. A young Koski, one of the empire's swift-footed messengers, stood beside a relay station waiting for his signal to depart. A woven pouch hung across his shoulder, carrying messages entrusted to him by officials far to the south. The journey ahead would take him across steep mountain passes and narrow trails clinging to cliffsides. Though he knew the roads well, each journey carried new challenges, for the mountains followed their own rules and revealed their moods without warning. At the sound of the conch shell, the messenger began to run. His sandals struck the stone path in steady rhythm as he moved through valleys where terraced fields climbed the hillsides like giant stairways. Farmers paused their work to watch him pass. Llamas grazed among the grasses. Condors circled high above the peaks, riding currents invisible to the eye. The road guided him forward, winding through landscapes so fast they seemed endless. As the day continued, the path climbed higher into the mountains. Thin air sharpened each breath, and distant summits, towering above him like guardians watching over the land. Yet the road remains constant. Carefully laid stones crossed ravines and rivers, leading travelers where no obvious route appeared to exist. Koski trusted the path completely. Those who had built it understood the mountains in ways few others could. Near sunset, he reached a ridge overlooking miles of valleys and peaks stretching into the distance. The road continued onward, disappearing around cliffs and into lands he could not see. Holding the message close, he paused for a moment to admire the view. Every village connected by the road, every traveler guided by its course, and every message carried from one end of the empire to the other, depended upon the same networks of paths. Then he continued running. The road did not end at the horizon, it simply continued beyond sight, linking one world to another. As twilight settled across the Andes, the passenger followed its winding course into the gathering darkness, trusting that the path would reveal itself one step at a time. Daily Thread for June 2nd, the map. Some maps are drawn upon parchment, some upon stone, some upon memory, and some upon the human heart. Today, Jason followed the promise of a distant shore he had never seen. Xuanzang walked beyond familiar teachings in search of deeper wisdom. Erik the Red trusted a horizon hidden beyond the sea. And the Chasqui ran the roads that stitched mountains into a single world. None of them possessed a complete picture of the journey ahead. The map revealed itself only as they moved forward. Perhaps that is a secret carried by every path worth walking. Direction is rarely given all at once. It unfolds through motion, through curiosity, through the willingness to continue even when the next turn remains hidden. The unknown does not ask us to see the entire road. It asks only that we trust the next step. And with each step, the map grows larger, the horizon wider, and the traveler wiser than when the journey first began.